Have you ever wondered, why do some people trade the rare for the shallowness and then live tormented by regret? Well, know one thing. You are not here by chance. If this video appeared to you, it's because there's a profound truth that needs to be heard. And perhaps what you'll discover here will completely change the way you view your past and your worth. Like this video right now if you've ever felt like you were shortchanged, ignored, or underestimated for being too genuine. Subscribe to the channel because here we speak from the truth from soul to soul. And in the comments, I want to see you write your number. 2. Only those who read it all the way through will understand why. Comment and tag someone who also needs to hear this. Get ready, because what you're about to hear isn't just a story of betrayal. It's the recognition that you were the real prize all along. There are decisions that become scars on the soul, not because of the mistake itself, but because in being made, they bury a rare opportunity, an encounter with the extraordinary. When someone exchanges a diamond for dust, they do so not simply out of ignorance of its value, but out of a cruel illusion that the dust's shine will suffice. It isn't. It never is. At first, it may seem like the exchange was advantageous. The new seems exciting, challenging, liberating, but this charm fades as quickly as it appeared. And then, in the silence of loss, in the absence that weighs like lead, reality imposes itself. What was left behind wasn't just a person. It was a destiny. It was peace. It was depth. It was a divine reflection of what could have been a lifetime of purpose. Meanwhile, the diamond follows its path. And this path is silent, but firm. It doesn't scream. It doesn't beg. It doesn't chase. It simply goes. And in this going, it flourishes. Prosperity, maturity, fulfillment all begin to surround it, not because it seeks revenge, but because life rewards those who remain true to their own essence, and who changed, who preferred dust. It watches from afar, with no access, no chance of return. And it's not just pride that hurts, it's the memory of what was possible and was lost. The mind begins to relive every wasted moment, every detail that once seemed small, but now screams as indisputable proof that something divine was there. Regret doesn't knock on the door. It breaks in, settles in, and becomes a permanent resident. The most painful thing is that this loss is invisible to the world, but it screams within the heart. It's not just about losing someone who was good. It's about losing a better version of yourself that only existed alongside the one who was replaced. Because the diamond, when abandoned, continued to evolve. But whoever was left with the dust stagnated. Trapped in a cycle of frustration, in a spiral of empty repetitions, dust has no shine of its own. It doesn't transform, it doesn't sustain. And whoever chose to live with it now must live with the knowledge that they could have built an empire, but chose to play with sand. And nothing hurts more than knowing that the only fault is their own. They looked at your kindness and mistook it for neediness. They thought your patience was ignorance, your forgiveness was desperation. But what they never understood, perhaps because they never reached that level of emotional maturity, is that your kindness was a conscious choice, a powerful resistance in a world that constantly pushes towards selfishness and individualism. While many built walls to protect themselves, you chose to keep your heart open. And this vulnerability wasn't weakness, it was a rare strength, cultivated through falls, new beginnings, and healed wounds of the soul. Choosing to remain a light even after being hurt is an act of bravery few have the courage to sustain. Their mistake was thinking you'd be there forever, that your understanding was infinite, that you'd tolerate anything in the name of love, friendship, or empathy. They underestimated your silence, missed the warnings disguised as emotional distance, ignored the small breakups until, one day, you simply left. And when you left, you took with you everything that made their days bearable. Because your presence wasn't just physical, it was a balm for the internal storms they themselves couldn't understand. And now, in the echo of your absence, regret has become loud. There are no more sweet words to soothe, no more embraces to welcome. There is only an immense void where once lived a being who should never have been discarded. Over time, they try to replace what they lost, trying to find their essence in others, but they can't, because people like you don't come along twice in a lifetime. And what was once mistaken for weakness is now understood as the greatest of strengths. But now, there's no turning back. The bridge was slowly burned by every disrespect, every devaluation, every attempt to diminish those who only wanted to love truly. And those who lose a heart like that spend their lives trying to make up for it, but they never succeed. Because kindness, when it's gone, takes with it a part of the world that will never be the same again. You arrived without asking permission, with a natural light that came not from what you said, but from who you were. Your presence carried an energy that destabilized those unready to face their own abysses, and so instead of embracing your light, they tried to extinguish it. They began with fake smiles and backhanded compliments. Then came the comparisons, the strategic silences, the subtle attempts to make you doubt yourself. All of this motivated by a single factor. You unintentionally exposed everything they tried to hide from you. You were a mirror, and those who live in masks cannot tolerate reflections. It wasn't you who changed the environment. It was they who withdrew from what they couldn't control. Your brilliance was too authentic, too intense, too true for those accustomed to being noticed only through effort. You, with your raw truth, drove everyone against the wall of their own fears. That's why they tried to diminish you, isolate you, replace you. But the universe has its own justice. What is true remains, even in the face of the greatest attempts to silence you. And while they lost themselves in ego games, you grew. You grew in awareness, in purpose, in light. A light that now shines even brighter precisely because it tried to be extinguished. Today they look around and realize that everything has become grayer without you. What once seemed small now looms large in memory. What was once routine is now mist. But the absence is permanent, because those who try to extinguish a star don't destroy it. They simply distance themselves from its warmth. And in this distance imposed by other people's insecurity, they realize too late that it wasn't their light that bothered them. It was their own darkness. The thirst for the immediate is a silent disease. They looked at their solid, patient construction, grounded in truth, and found it too slow. They traded their depth for shallow promises, their roots for disposable glitter. They chose haste, momentary pleasure, the path that demands little, believing this would be more satisfying. But they didn't understand that everything great takes time. While you were building a cathedral, they were chasing sandcastles, and sandcastles sooner or later crumble with the first wind. They didn't realize they were throwing away an invaluable investment. You weren't just company. You were a foundation. You were planning. You were the future. You were a legacy. But no, it was easier to choose the now, the fantasy, what shines briefly and fades before dawn. And so they did. They left. They turned their backs on a destiny that was ready to be shared, but required maturity to be understood. And now they live in this eternal cycle of searching and frustration, trying to find in others what they despised in you. But all they find are empty versions, soulless replicas of what you authentically offered. Seeing you prosper without shortcuts, reaping the fruits of patience and truth, is a cruel reminder for those who gambled in haste. Because nothing hurts more than realizing that what was slow and steady became true victory, while what was fast was lost in the dust of time. The mistake was irreversible, and the lesson came too late. Betraying someone who carries light isn't just an emotional transgression, it's a breaking of a pact with the invisible. People like this don't come into our lives by chance. They come as an answer, as support, as guidance, and often they're the protection we didn't even know we needed. By betraying them, something far beyond trust is broken. The connection with what kept life in harmony is severed, because when you abandon a soul aligned with divine purpose, you also lose access to the blessings that surround it. At first, everything seems the same. Life goes on. Routines continue. Smiles still appear. But little by little, everything begins to fall out of balance. What once flowed easily becomes stuck. What was once light becomes heavy, and no one understands why. But the truth is simple. You've lost your spiritual covering. That person who, simply by their presence, kept you aligned with peace, truth, and purpose. You've turned your back on what the universe gave you that is most valuable, and now you reap the rewards of that choice. And it's not a punishment, it's a consequence. Spirituality has silent but inflexible laws, and one of them is clear. When you betray the one sent to protect you, the universe withdraws its protection. And the void this leaves is so deep that there is no substitute to fill it. Peace fades, doors close, and the soul begins to lose itself in its own imbalance. While the other person thrives, guided by forces that continue to care for them, You find yourself trapped in repetition, in inexplicable losses, in an existence that no longer has a direction, because betraying the one who carries light is, deep down, betraying your own destiny. Not all connections are mere chance encounters. Some are trials, spiritual tests disguised as human relationships. You were just that, an opportunity for growth, a path to evolution. Your presence carried peace, wisdom, and a vibration that could have uplifted those around you, but they didn't understand. They looked at you as an ordinary person, ignored the signs, disregarded the value that lay in every gesture, every word, every silence that carried depth. They didn't realize they were facing a challenge sent by life itself, to love, respect, and grow alongside a rare being. And they failed. Driven by ego, impulsiveness, or pride, they acted like those who don't know what they have until it's gone. They chose shortcuts, easy pleasures, and noisy distractions. They refused the lesson your presence offered and preferred to live the repetition of their own mistakes. You didn't demand perfection, only presence, truth, and dedication. But they couldn't even deliver that. And so the test concluded with the most bitter note possible: failure. Now, as you advance to new phases, guided by an even stronger purpose, they remain stuck in stagnation, not because they lack capacity, but because they failed in the most important choice, recognizing the value of those who walk alongside them with intention. Time has passed, and today they see what they had in you, but there's no more page to rewrite. The chapter has closed, and with it, the opportunity to share a shared future. Failed by their own immaturity, today they live the result of a simple test: to perceive the obvious, to appreciate the rare, to cherish the gift life has given them. But they failed all the alternatives, and now the learning will be through absence. An absence that doesn't offer a second chance. There are decisions that not only shape a destiny, but alter an entire lineage. When someone chooses lust over construction, momentary pleasure over depth, they are throwing away something that transcends the present. You weren't just love. You were a foundation. You were a legacy. Your connection carried ancestral strength, with the potential to bear lasting fruit, not just for two hearts, but for future generations. But they weren't ready for this. They were addicted to what is shallow, to what excites quickly and fades even faster. And in that impulse they chose the ephemeral. Lust, however seductive, is empty. It promises fire but delivers ashes. At first, everything seems to make sense. The body vibrates, the ego feeds, the world turns. But soon the euphoria passes, and what remains is silence. Silence and emptiness. Meanwhile, the connection that could have created a legacy moves in another direction. You, even wounded, rebuild yourself. And in rebuilding yourself, you strengthen, grow, and align with something even greater. Your energy was not ordinary. It was transformative. And whoever lost you didn't just lose a relationship. They lost the chance to be part of something eternal. Today, they try to hide their regret, but it's in every lonely sigh, in every sleepless night, in every thought that returns to what was left behind. Because now they know. They chose something that doesn't build, that doesn't sustain, that doesn't endure. Meanwhile, you are a living reminder of what is true, and your journey proves that, contrary to what they thought, the eternal doesn't need to beg for space. It continues and flourishes. Lust consumes, the legacy endures, and they chose the wrong side of history. You never needed to say much to make an impact. Your very presence was a veritable manifesto, a mirror that effortlessly revealed to the other everything they were trying to hide. And that was exactly what frightened them. It wasn't you who were the problem. It was what you revealed. Your achievements exposed their failures. Your peace exposed their inner conflicts. Your transparency made any mask unsustainable. And then, like someone who couldn't stand their reflection, they decided to break the mirror. They attacked, betrayed, and distanced themselves, all to avoid dealing with the truth that you, just by being you, brought to light. It's hard to face your own emptiness when you're with someone whole. It's uncomfortable to be around someone who inspires change when you're afraid to change. You never meant to diminish anyone. You were just living your truth. But for them, this truth was unbearable. It screamed everything they didn't yet have the courage to face: their lack of purpose, their lack of integrity, their need to evolve. So, as a form of defense, they chose to attack, not out of direct malice, but out of pure emotional cowardice. After all, it's easier to destroy the mirror than to face the reflection, but breaking the mirror doesn't erase what it revealed. It only makes healing more difficult. Today, they constantly try to find the same kind of authenticity in others, but everything rings shallow, everything seems empty, because the mirror that you were wasn't ordinary. It was unique. And by breaking it, they also destroyed the chance for true transformation. Now all that remains are fragments, and the pain of knowing that the reflection that once made them want to be better is now out of reach. You were the rare, the authentic, the irreplaceable. But for some reason, perhaps distraction, perhaps immaturity, they chose the generic. They opted for what demanded less, what confronted less, what demanded less evolution. They failed to see that they were faced with an original, unique project, one that could not be replicated. And just like someone who abandons a work of art to chase after some random print, they dismissed what was eternal for something fleeting. But copies never carry a soul. They imitate but do not transform. They appear but are not. And it is in this abyss between the true and the false that they now lose themselves. Today, they live in search of their essence in other people. They seek in someone's gaze what existed in their silence. They seek in the touch of another body what was in their embrace. But they don't find it, because what you offered wasn't ordinary. It was construction. It was sensitivity, depth, vision. And the greatest pain isn't just in not having you anymore. It's in realizing that what was once scorned is now unattainable. That what seemed ordinary was, in fact, too extraordinary for small minds to grasp. They bet on practicality and lost eternity. They pursued what was easy and left behind what was necessary. And now, amid so many versions, they understand that nothing compares to the original. But the original is no longer available. It has moved on, grown, and flourished. And those who opted for the copy now live the silent punishment of living with what seems, but never will be. From the beginning, they thought you were weak, disposable, replaceable. They bet against you like someone betting against the tide, believing you wouldn't have the power to change anything. They saw you as an underdog, as someone whose absence wouldn't have an impact. But they were wrong, because you were the chosen one. And the chosen one doesn't need to prove anything. They simply move forward, and in their journey they transform everything around them. They didn't see your strength because they were too busy measuring appearances, status, and moments. But what you carried was essence, was purpose, was destiny. The moment they turned their backs, they began to lose. At first it was imperceptible, small doors closing, opportunities slipping through their fingers. Then the emptiness began to grow, and with it the awareness of the mistake they had made. Because while they were content to survive, you were rebuilding, reinventing yourself, growing stronger. And when you returned as a giant. Not out of revenge, but because that's what you've always been. And now the world sees what they tried to hide, that you weren't just anyone, you were the turning point they scorned. Today, you advance, free, aligned, unbeatable, and they watch, from afar, in silence, digesting the bitterness of having bet against someone who was shaped by destiny itself to win. The mistake wasn't leaving you. The mistake was not recognizing that you were already everything they would spend their lives trying to become. And they lost. They lost the game, the prize, and the chance to be part of the most beautiful story that ever crossed their path. When betrayal knocked on his door, it didn't just come as pain, it came as destruction, an emotional earthquake that seemed to have come to shatter everything, to tear the ground from under his feet, to extinguish the flame of hope. At first it was just that, confusion, anguish, sleepless nights, and a feeling of having been discarded as worthless. But slowly, in the silence of emotional grief, something began to emerge. A strength, a will to move on, a desire to prove, to himself rather than to the world, that from this would emerge a new being, stronger, more aware, more whole. Betrayal didn't destroy you, it transformed you. It tore apart old versions of who you were, and in turn revealed layers that lay dormant. Resilience, courage, clarity. It was at rock bottom that you found foundations you would never have discovered on the surface. The pain, which once burned, became fuel. Resentment became a tool, and absence became a space for you to expand. Today, what was once a wound has become a scar, and a scar is proof that something has been overcome. You overcame the darkness. And more than that, You used the darkness as a springboard to reach further than you ever imagined. The most ironic thing of all is that whoever hurt you thought they were paralyzing you, that your world would crumble. But what they didn't know is that the universe doesn't allow a purposeful soul to be lost because of pain. On the contrary, it uses this pain to accelerate destiny. Today, you walk lighter, stronger, more awake. And whoever betrayed you unknowingly gave you the key to your greatest evolution. The pain wasn't in vain. It was the push you needed to achieve everything that was already written to be yours. You brought stability, peace, perspective. But for those who live drowning in chaos, this can be threatening. There are people who have become so accustomed to emotional disorder that when they encounter something healthy, they feel uncomfortable. They don't know how to react to lightness. They distrust tranquility. They confuse love with manipulation, care with weakness, stability with boredom. And that's what happened. They weren't ready for the harmony you represented. Instead of opening themselves to healing, they chose the old pattern: chaos, conflict, and lack of control. It wasn't about you, it was about them, about the wounds that were never healed, about the unresolved traumas, about the mind conditioned to believe that love needs drama to be true. You came as a cure, but healing requires effort, surrender, and confrontation, and they weren't willing. They preferred the familiar, even if it was toxic. They chose dysfunctional relationships, dense environments, people who only confirmed the devaluation they already felt about themselves. It was more comfortable to continue in what hurt than to face the light you offered. Today, they live imprisoned in the choices they made, surrounded by conflicts they never wanted, but which reflect exactly where they are emotionally. Meanwhile, you carry on. You carry on, light, whole, aligned with those who also seek balance. The pain of rejection has become liberation, because now you understand, not everyone wants to be saved, and some people must first lose themselves even further in their own chaos before they truly desire the peace you already carry. Some stories are written for two authors. You knew this, and you tried. You tried to keep the plot alive, to give them both space to evolve, mature, and grow together. But writing as a couple requires commitment, loyalty, and dedication, and they chose to write another narrative, perhaps out of vanity, perhaps out of fear, perhaps out of sheer spiritual blindness. The fact is, they turned their backs on a chapter that would have brought them to the climax of their lives, and in doing so, they didn't just lose you, they lost the role they were destined to play. Now the script has moved on without them. You continued writing your story, finding new characters, new landscapes, new purposes, and while your plot grows ever grander, they watch from afar, trapped in repetitive pages, living a directionless plot. Because the truth is, not every absence can be reversed. Some choices are definitive, and cutting yourself out of your own story is one of the cruelest. They had a special place, but they left the stage before the main scene. The most painful part, and the one that consumes them silently, is knowing they could have been part of the most beautiful construction of their lives. But they chose to be extras in meaningless stories. Today, they are spectators of their journey, and there is no going back. The plot has already changed. The new narrative no longer includes them, because when someone gives up an essential role, the script adapts, and life goes on, with or without them. When they decided to leave, they overlooked a crucial detail. You were still in the process of transformation. What they left behind was an unfinished version of yourself, full of love, dedication, and shared dreams. But the pain of rejection, abandonment, and betrayal accelerated your metamorphosis. You didn't just heal, you rebuilt yourself. And in that reconstruction, someone they will never know was born. Because the new you isn't an update, it's a revolution. A bulletproof, lucid, powerful version. A version that no longer tolerates crumbs or lukewarm presence. They thought they could go back if they repented, that everything would be the same, waiting for a new beginning. But that beginning no longer exists. Time has passed, and with it opportunity. What was vulnerable is now solid. What was boundless love is now self-care. What was availability is now a filter. And in this new you, they have no place. Because the key that would one day open your door has been replaced, and those who lived the previous version have no access to the current one. What eats them up inside is knowing they lost not only the person you were, but the incredible person you became, and they can't be a part of that. There's no more space, no more connection. They had their chance, and they squandered it. Now they live with the bitter taste of knowing that, while you're moving forward to places you once dreamed of together, they're on the outside, knocking on a door that no longer exists. In the end, the greatest loss was never yours. It was theirs. Because you moved on, evolved and healed, but they remained trapped in the version of themselves that made the mistake. Every time they look back, the regret isn't just for losing you, it's for realizing they missed the chance to be someone better with you. You were a mirror, a bridge, an impulse, and by rejecting you, they also rejected their own evolution. It's not just your absence that torments them, it's what they could have become and didn't. You represented a higher version of life, a path of growth, of learning, of true connection. But walking with you required courage. Courage to change, to look within, to abandon emotional addictions. And they didn't have it. They opted for the familiar, the safe, the unchanging, and with that, they fell behind. Now your every step is a reminder of everything they could have experienced and wasted. Because time doesn't come back and some people don't get a second chance. You don't carry resentment, because you understand that fate acts with precision. But they carry a wound that won't heal, the knowledge that they could have been bigger, better, more complete. But they chose the smaller version of themselves, and in that choice, they lost you. But more than that, they lost themselves. And that's the loss that hurts the most.